Oh my goodness. Hello. I have no idea how to do this. All right. Hi, everyone. This is my very first Instagram Live. And let's see if Michelle is here. How do I do that? Here she is. Waiting for privtoprog. Connecting. Hello.
Hi. It's your first live ever?
Yes.
Wow, man. Heavy.
Never done it. I've never done it. So that just shows you how much I've been looking forward to this.
I appreciate that, girl. I really appreciate that.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good. You know, I'm safe. I'm healthy. That's kind of all you could ask for right now.
Exactly.
I'm so excited to be talking about this with you, to just have this conversation with you. I've been really looking forward to it ever since you reached out to me. Yeah. Not just because I really admire what you and Melissa have been doing for the last few years, but just this time and this climate right now, as many of these conversations as we can be having, as much as possible, we should be. And so thank you.
Yeah, definitely. The conversation is what needs to happen.
Yeah.
The conversation is what is the exact thing that hasn't been happening in our country. I mean, I grew up with people that still say that their parents have literally taught them to not talk about race.
Yeah, I was one of those people. I mean, it was, you don't talk about religion, politics, and I think race was kind of wrapped up in the politics of it all in my family.
Right.
It had nothing to do with politics. I mean, people make it about politics, but yeah, I was in one of those families.
Yeah. So then how did you end up here? What happened in your life? Was there any kind of defining moment where you said, I have to talk about this?
And it was recent. And I mean, also, I want people to know first, I want people to know your story as well, just to give my followers, if they don't know who you are, your background. And then I want to answer your question, because I feel like I'll get long-winded. But for anyone that doesn't know Michelle and Melissa's page, From Privilege to Progress, I don't know if everyone remembers. It was in 2018, right?
2018.
There were two men that were arrested at a Starbucks for doing nothing. And I don't know if you want to tell your story, but it's important for people who don't already know it to hear it.
Definitely. I mean, let me adjust this. I'm visiting my man right now in Texas, and his cute little apartment, his lighting is like. So yeah, that was worse, right? Let me go back. So yeah, for anyone that doesn't know, you know, I think a lot of people heard that story. We got messages from Australia because everybody goes to Starbucks. So it's interesting now because I feel like now that was divine intervention. So just a little bit of background about myself. My great-grandfather was an activist in Africa. So I'm first generation Ghanaian American. My great-grandfather was one of the main liberators of Ghana from England. He went to jail for 7 years for believing in the rights for our tribe. He was a chief linguist for our tribe's king. My uncle was the president of Ghana for 2 terms. My grandpa was a chief. My uncle are chief. My uncles are still in the government. So activism is just in my blood, but I didn't realize that. I didn't even know my full family history until after all this unfolded. So I had lived in Philadelphia for 5 years before I went to that Starbucks. And I actually only have been there one other time, but I would purposefully walk an additional 4 blocks past that location because it's in a very gentrified part of the city. Philadelphia is a very black city, but that specific neighborhood is like 70% white. And it's designed that way. It's one of the richest parts of Philly. It's beautiful, but it's very segregated. So I didn't like going to that Starbucks because I was the only Black person the last time that I went there. I don't know what it was about this day. Something told me to go back to the Starbucks.
Wow.
I don't know what it would have been. I walk in there, same scene. I'm the only Black woman in there. And I was like, well, I'm already here. I'm not going to be a weirdo and walk out. So I get my coffee. I sit down. I'm doing whatever. I'm there for about 45 minutes. And these two Black guys walk in. Super cute. Caramel, chocolate. One with the green jacket with the beard. I was like, yes. So adorable. So I'm watching them. And also when you're the only one and someone else walks in, you take notice. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, now there's more of me. I felt more comfortable. They walk up to the barista. They say, can we use the bathroom? She said, no, it's for paying customers only. They said, okay. They sat down. That was it. That was it.
Which, by the way, I've done that a million times. I've done that so many times.
Right. And I don't do that because sometimes when you're a person of color, you police your own body. You don't want to draw attention to yourself. So I was like, I don't like doing that. And it's funny because when other people do it, I'm like, brave. I'm like, I'm like, I would never. Sometimes I buy things that I don't even need just to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
So I saw her walking away and she started like mouthing something to herself. And the barista, she just walked, and she was, I don't know why, but I looked at her. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but my initial gut reaction said, I think she just said something racist. I don't know why. I couldn't hear her. I couldn't read her lips. But when we have those moments, it's so important to check ourselves. And I said, Michelle, now you're being prejudiced. You have no idea what she said. How do you know that she didn't forget some simple syrup in the back? You need to mind your own business. And I was literally having a conversation with myself in my head to say, why are you so focused on this woman? Like, why can't you just leave her alone? So I put my head back down. I continue working. 5 minutes later, the cops show up. And, nothing had happened. So I'm thinking that they were responding to something earlier in the day, maybe even the day before. I'm trying to eavesdrop because I'm trying to get the dirt. I'm like, oh, some drama. I'm trying to listen in. So I'm listening in, and I heard her lie. And I heard her say, those two guys in the corner are refusing to leave. And I immediately said, I bet what she said was racist. Because why else was my body feeling like I didn't trust her?
Your gut doesn't lie.
Your gut doesn't lie. People, ladies especially, our gut doesn't lie.
Yeah.
So what made me more scared is that the cops didn't ask any follow-up questions. There was no investigation. There was no, what did they do? They were just like, oh, those two? And so I started getting a little sweaty. I remember looking at my palms and being like, what's going to happen? Like, I used to have panic attacks, so my fingers would start to get tingly. And I remember doing this, being like, something's going to happen. And I remember looking at them, and they looked at me, and we both were like looking at the cops to be like, what's going on? Something's happening, because they started walking toward them. So the three of us were just like, what is happening? So they beeline for these guys. 2 turned to 4, turned to 6, turned to 8 police officers.
8 police officers.
8 police officers for 2 guys who didn't buy a coffee. So I stood up, and what was frustrating to me is that the guy next to me, the white guy next to me, was there for the same amount of time I was there. He didn't buy a coffee. I saw a white girl come in mid-jog, use the bathroom. I remember she's wearing purple headphones. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder if she works here, that she knows the code, because we have codes at our bathrooms in Philly. Because homeless people go in there. It's interesting that the homeless people don't get arrested as quickly as the Black people. Not fine. But anyways,
really good point,
right? And they have codes because they would do things in the bathroom that they weren't supposed to do. So I remember thinking to myself, maybe she works here. Maybe she's here so often that they just give her the code and she just knows it, so they just let her use the bathroom. I was so frustrated, and I remember thinking to myself, okay, I know I'm going to do something, but what am I going to do? Because it was clear to me no one else was paying attention. No one else was going to do anything, say anything, nothing. I remember actually a white guy sitting next to them who actually got up and walked to the other side of the Starbucks, and I was like, you motherfucker. I was like, what? Serious?
As if it was like inconveniencing his day.
Right. And sometimes I think about him randomly. Every time I tell the story, I think about him, and I wonder how he feels now. I wonder what, if anything, if his life was changed in that moment. I hope it was. Because I know everyone there, their life was changed. So I got up the courage. I was actually physically sweating. Like, my armpits were actually literally, I remember my armpits being, like, wet. Because I was terrified. I'm like, I'm about to go approach the cops who are arresting Black people for not buying a coffee, and I'm a Black person. Mm-hmm. What's going to happen to me? But in that moment, I said to myself, these are my brothers. These are, like, how do I know if the slave trade didn't happen, they wouldn't be my neighbors or my friends or my family in Africa? Like, literally, that's that's just how I feel. So I got up, I approached the cop, and I said, well, one of the 8. And I said, why are you doing this? And he told me to go ask the barista, which I thought was a very interesting response. Like, no accountability or responsibility to explain why I have to do this. Go ask the barista. Is that how this works? Is she your boss? Like, she just tells you what to do?
For someone that you pay his paychecks.
Right. Go ask the barista.
Taxes that fund his paychecks.
Yep. So I said, oh, okay. Because that's not de-escalating the situation. You were telling me that it's okay for me to go and confront someone, which I did. So I said, all right. I walked up to the barista and I said, why'd you call the cops? Melissa, her chest and her face just immediately flushed red. Like, it was like fire. Wow. She kind of stuttered and she was like, oh, I really can't say, in a very fake damsel in distress type of voice. Kind of like Amy Cooper. Remember when Amy Cooper called it the same thing?
Change that tone of voice and you're putting on an act.
You're putting on an act. So I was like, oh, I can say I watched the entire thing happen from beginning to end. Mm. And I said, did you feel like your life was in danger? And she ignored me and she walked down the Starbucks aisle. So I followed her and I asked her, I was like, did you feel like you were being threatened? And she completely ignored me. She wouldn't even look at me. So I took a step back. I yelled at her. I said, you're a fucking coward. Went back to my table. I'm packing up all my stuff. And all these white women staring at me. And I remember one of the girls I'm friends with now, Jody, I remember her lips started quivering. I was like, oh my God, if she cries, I'm going to cry. I looked to my right, and this white girl was like looking at me, kind of like, okay, what are we going to do now? So I'm packing up my stuff, and she starts packing up her stuff too. Like, yeah, like I'm going to leave too. And the only other person that day in the Starbucks to address the Starbucks was my partner, Melissa. The only other person. She stood up. We made eye contact from across the Starbucks. And she says something along the lines of, I was just here. I come here. I sit here for hours. I don't buy coffee. No one ever asks me to leave, and you know why. So we basically staged a walkout, and I remember I asked the cops again, do you realize that you're arresting 2 dudes for not buying a coffee? And one of them was like, well, we weren't being disrespectful, were we? And I said, you're arresting 2 dudes for not buying a coffee. And they turned their backs to me. They literally turned around and put their backs to me. And I was like, I'm losing my mind.
But you weren't though.
Right. Watch them be handcuffed behind their back, escorted into a cop car. I remember like doing one of these at them because I couldn't get them out, but I was like, I see you. I don't know what to do. They were taken to the police station. They were there for like 12 hours. And it went viral. And I didn't have Twitter or Facebook at the time. But people were like texting me and calling me, hey, Michelle, the thing that you told me about is blowing up.
Right, and you can hear your voice in the video.
Right. And I didn't know. I mean, when they were censoring Melissa, so all the media was like hounding Melissa, hounding her, trying to get her interviews. And I saw it happening and I wasn't going to say anything. But to be honest, I was like, typical. They're censoring the white person when I knew no one would have known what was going on had I not said anything. So fortunately, she tracked me down. So she literally stalked me. She found me somehow, tracked me down, and she was like, we need to meet. Everyone's approaching me. You're the one that said something. This is just ridiculous. We met up the next Monday. We were like, what are we going to do? Now that the world is paying attention to what racism actually can look like today, what are we going to do about it? Mm-hmm. And literally, it's continuing that conversation for everyone to address their own biases. People just didn't, if we hadn't said anything, no one in that Starbucks would have realized that they were witnessing a blatant act of racial discrimination happening right in front of their faces.
Yep.
Everyone watching this live right now, you have probably seen something like this, but you didn't quite recognize it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, you know, and then it was kind of cool because people started waking up, and after that, you saw a string of videos of white people calling the cops on Black people for living their lives. It was the girl selling water, the boy mowing the lawn, another guy moving into his apartment, which I don't even know what that call would possibly sound like. Like, there's a guy furnishing an apartment for free. Like, what? Like, like, how is that a 911 call? You know, and 2 years later, we're still seeing it. We're seeing the Amy Coopers. We're still seeing these things happening, but at least people are a bit more aware.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to create just this collective consciousness that we have to keep having these conversations. We have to talk to one another, because racism is not going to end unless we have these conversations. It's just not going to happen. Racism, I'm going to say, it's not a Black problem.
No.
Racism was created by white people hundreds of years ago. It's unfortunate that we are here, but these are the cards that we were dealt. And if we don't do anything about it, what message are we sending out to the world?
Yep. It's just going to stay the same as it has for the past 500 years. Literally. And the irony about being an anti-racist is that we have to acknowledge, I think, our racism and acknowledge that it's a white person problem and that there is nothing wrong with the Black community or Black people at all. It is something everyone has to look inside themselves as a white person to amend, to change.
And that, you know, it's that shame and that guilt. And again, the very strategic, I mean, let's be honest, racism is smart.
Yeah. It is. And it's adaptable.
Very.
It is really, like, scarily malignant.
Yes, it is very, very easy. It is, I mean, race isn't even real.
No.
It's not even real. Like, do you think a zebra looks at another zebra and they're like, yeah, man, that zebra, I don't know, he's got too many stripes. I don't know about him. No. Like, there hasn't been one human being on this face of this planet who's ever going to be identical to me or you for the rest of humanity or from the beginning of humanity.
Right.
That's the beauty of us.
Yeah.
But when you can, I mean, like, literally it was created for control and for wealth. And it's the oldest trick in the book. It's divide and conquer. Divide and conquer.
It's created for self-interest and power.
That's it. And we're just trying to get people to understand that we all have biases. Listen, when I see a white guy walking down the street that's bald with tattoos, I get worried that he's in the KKK.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I have to talk to myself and be like, Michelle, what's wrong with you? You don't know. Actually, I don't know if my friend's watching. My friend Nick, he literally fits that description, and he's like one of the coolest guys ever, and like only dates Black girls. So it's like, you're like, you know, you realize that that's a bias that you have in the media portraying what a white supremacist looks like.
Yeah,
and you have to talk to yourself and have those really tough but radically honest conversations and say, where does this thought come from? Why do I believe this? Why is this happening? Because it's not natural for us. It's not like, I mean, when I'm watching a white person experience white fragility, I'm like, that's also trauma. Like look at your reaction, your physical reaction. I mean, you're uncomfortable right now. Mm-hmm. That's not normal.
No, none of
shouldn't. Yeah, you know, and other people from other countries look at us and they're like, what's going on over there? Because we're very uniquely racist. We're very uniquely, well, South America, Central America, but America, you know, North America, we're not ready to give it up. We're not ready to give up the profiting off of Black bodies, which is why they tell you, don't talk about race. What do you mean, don't talk about race? Because what's been going on since 1619 is the same thing that's going on now. It just looks different. My boyfriend says it's they've innovated it. They've innovated racism.
Absolutely. It so redefines itself every time it has to. When like one step of progress has been made, maybe in the right direction towards anti-racism, someone has to come in and save what they're trying to maintain.
Exactly.
I mean, your story is so. I watched the video when it happened, and also, my mom was a barista.
Yeah.
Single mom, and I cannot. First of all, my mom never would have done anything like that, but it did hit home for me also because everyone drinks Starbucks. Everyone goes to Starbucks, and I remember back then being so upset by it. And also knowing back then too that whatever sensitivity training Starbucks did, how long did they shut down for?
A day.
A day.
One day.
I knew back then that's not going to do anything.
Nope. And it didn't. Did you see what they did recently?
Yes. And that was actually an uncomfortable conversation concerning race that I had to have with my family, where with one of my sisters, I was very much disagreeing with her. I didn't want to go there, and I have been boycotting, and I could not believe that they weren't letting people stand up for this. It's just ridiculous. That it goes beyond corporate bullshit.
It does. It does. When I saw that, I was like, yo, because we actually tried to work with them in the beginning, and they blew us off.
Of course they did.
They blew us off. They were like, they got on a phone call with us reluctantly. They're like, well, we're doing our own things. You know, we hired Robin DiAngelo, but yet 2 years later, you told people they couldn't wear Black Lives Matter pins as baristas. And then, to be honest, they actually came up with this statement. They actually lied about us in the media, and I called them out, and they immediately got onto a phone call with us. I was like, I just want to make sure that the public knows what actually happened, because they said something along the lines of, we've been trying to work with Michelle and Melissa, but we can't come to an agreement yet. I was like, as if we were being difficult. I was like, oh, Melissa, did you see this? And I'm like, no, you guys literally told us that you're doing your own thing, and you just didn't want to work with us at this time. It wasn't important to you. And they said that we hadn't had an agreement yet. And I was like, okay. So I knew that the whole closing down stores was just a PR stunt. I mean, clearly, why wouldn't you want to work with the two girls that, I mean, I didn't have any ill will towards them. It wasn't you, it was a barista. Like, she was not the CEO. I understand that. Like, So at the beginning, I wasn't necessarily upset with Starbucks, so I just assumed you would want to work with us. But then I found out later on that apparently she was from like middle of nowhere, Ohio. Why would you put her in one of the blackest cities in America and think that she was going to be racially competent enough to serve? And you have to have these conversations.
I doubt they even thought of that.
Exactly.
I doubt they even thought.
So here we are 2 years later, and there was Ahmaud Arbery and then Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and so many others. And, our count grew by literally over 300,000 in like 2 weeks. So we're just super grateful that people are finally understanding what we've been trying to say for 2 years, which is you need to educate yourself. Because if you grew up like I did, I went to an all-white school. I learned that much. I learned about Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and Jackie Robinson, as if they were the only 3 Black people that ever existed.
Yeah. Where'd you grow up?
Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Like Hershey's chocolate.
Yes, we were the only chocolate in the town. There was 3 families, and it was tough, man. It was confusing because I was also African, so I experienced racism, but I didn't understand why. I'm like, I don't understand why. And it wasn't until my 20s that I started diving into and actually educating myself, because it was too painful for me to even look at. I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to think about, I didn't want to know the truth, to be honest, because I knew it was going to be too painful for me. And all my friends were white. I dated white guys. And when you experience that much racism, you internalize it. And I was trying to, at one point, separate myself from the Black community and be like, oh, no. I'm not like that. I'm African. I'm different. But I recognized that white people were nicer to me when they found that I was African. It was, oh, well, now you're exotic. Now you're different. And I think another reason is that they didn't have slavery mirroring back at them. They felt more comfortable with me because they didn't have any guilt. They could look at me and talk to me, 0 guilt.
Shame involved.
Exactly. And when I realized that worked, I just went with that. And it was a really shameful time in my life, a few years. And I wouldn't have been able to admit this to you 5 years ago, because I was still dealing with that. I still had a lot of shame around the fact that I was trying to separate myself from being Black American. And, but I was born in America and I'm Black. So I'm a Black American. Yeah. Some people don't know that I am African. You would never know that. And I need white people to realize that, when someone tells me I don't have any biases, I'm like, you're lying, homie. I grew up with you. And if I can have biases against Black Americans, what? You know how confusing that is? Like, I'm like, yo, Michelle, that was a racist thought about where is that coming from? But when you grow up in that area and you're being told you're an Oreo, you're not really like them, you're like white on the outside, you're white on the inside, you're like, oh, well, it must be true. There must be something different. And I didn't have enough education to know differently until I had my own racist interaction with a police officer when I was 23. They literally thought that I was a thieving sex worker. Literally walked into a club, 5 police officers in bulletproof vests with crime unit on their vests. I'm skinny. I'm like 117 pounds right now. Back then, I was like 112. So they're walking in, and I'm like, what's going on? They asked me to come outside, and I go outside with them, and they're literally, one dude in particular is treating me like I am this woman. I was livid, but I was terrified. I literally started peeing myself.
Oh my God.
I remember trying to hold it because I was like, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to go to jail? I don't understand what's happening. I was like, I work at Calvin Klein and Nationwide Insurance. Like, I don't know.
And what they just like plucked you out of?
Yes.
Out of
yes. And it was and I remember saying to the cop, I said, you can't treat me like this. This isn't okay. And I remember he walked back, got in my face, and goes, this is your fault. And I said, and that's when it clicked for me. I said, my fault for being Black, for fitting the description. A white female police officer actually grabbed me, and she like pulled me to the side, and she told me to go report him the next day because she's seen him be racist before. And I was super grateful, and I went and I did it, and I went to the police station. I was like 23. Went to the police station, and I reported him. They're like, oh yeah, we've had complaints about him before. I'm like, oh, so then why is the lead officer in an investigation when the suspect is Black?
Yeah.
If you know. And then later on in the years, I thought to myself, why did she do anything in the moment? Why did she pull me aside and almost whisper that to me? Why wouldn't she have stopped him in the middle of his clearly racist act?
Yeah.
And do something?
It would have been much more effective if she had. But even then, she probably would have been punished.
She would have been. I have a couple of friends who are police officers right now, and they say trying to fight racism in the police force is very lonely, and it's actually scary because you do face retaliation. You could be put on death row. You don't know what's going to happen to you if you're a cop and speak out against, because there's so much racism in the force that it's almost part of who they are.
Absolutely.
Which is why she had to pull me aside and say it quietly.
Jesus. So they didn't arrest you. She kind of dissolved.
No. Well, they realized I wasn't her. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, and the kid the guy was there. Apparently, so the situation was this white kid, he like took home this Black sex worker, and when he woke up, all his money was gone. And before the cops showed up, he actually got right up to my face. I remember thinking to myself, I was like, what are you doing? He thought I was her. I'm like, how do you sleep with a woman and not know that I'm not her? Like,
I'm sorry, it's happening.
Yes. He thought I was her.
Wow.
I was like, dude, you fugly. I would never. What are you talking about? What? I'm not her. Yeah, he thought I was her. They all just thought I was her. And the cops just believed him.
Of course they did. I'm so glad. I mean, I feel like you were lucky that you realized you weren't her.
I was incredibly lucky.
Damn, I'm sorry you went through that.
It's all right. You know, I can laugh about it now, but at the time I was like, and you know what? And again, another situation where no one around me said anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like white people, like we got like you know, I mean, look at what's happening right now. We just had the largest civil rights movement in history.
Yep. And
that's because white people got off the couch and came out in the streets with us.
Woke up.
They woke up.
And everyone's been using the word woke for years now, but I don't know if it was truly an awakening until this moment.
Beautiful. Absolutely. To me, like I had chills. I cried throughout, you know, watching protests. because this is what solidarity means. This is what it is. This is us demanding justice and demanding peace. And, you know, the police brutality that you were seeing against a lot of these protesters, I hope people understand and realize that that's how much they want to protect their right to do whatever they want to us.
Yeah.
I don't think that people
like a last dying breath, hanging on to something that everyone else is aware needs to be drastically changed.
Yeah, I don't think that way people were anticipating being tear gassed when you're not doing anything, being tear gassed when you don't have any weapon. That's just like a little itty bitty snippet of what the Black experience has been like. You do nothing and you are attacked. I mean, like on a very literal way. And I'm so grateful. I hope that we can. It felt a little bit of. It feels like there's a little bit of slowness happening. Like it's quieting down a little teeny bit, but our count is still growing. So I'm grateful, and I'm hoping that people are continuing to do their work and educating themselves and looking inward. And you know, I'm seeing a lot of people wanting to quickly jump to do things. They want to jump and create a page or a website, and I'm like, nah. You just need to relax and
you need to educate yourself first. Yeah. That's
you know
where I'm at now. I mean, I feel like I was almost even, I've been nervous about this conversation too, because I feel like I'm so new to this in my education, and to even learn, like, I feel like I don't even have the right to call myself an anti-racist yet. But
you're an anti-racist.
I mean, but then I've come to the realization that it's every decision. It's second by second that you are making these decisions, and you're looking in the mirror, even like you're saying, in every thought that you have, or if you check yourself and you recognize something that doesn't feel right, you can do one of two things, and you can be an anti-racist about it, and you can do nothing and thereby be a racist, or be overtly racist and just think that what you're saying is the truth. And that's been, I mean, my awakening sadly came late, and I was not willfully ignorant. It was not like I didn't know that this was going on. Mm-hmm. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, in a suburb, and very white, very white. I can count on one hand how many Black kids were in my high school. But then at the same time, I was not completely ignorant to things, because my dad worked for the professional sports teams in Denver, for the Nuggets and the Broncos. So I was at least exposed to Black people. Mm-hmm. And athletes, no matter how much money they make, are still victims of racism.
Did you see it? Did you see any racism towards the athletes, or
I don't know. I did, because I was so young, but I'm sure my dad did.
Yeah,
the doctor for the teams, so he worked pretty closely with a lot of those guys. And I'm sure my dad saw stuff when they were traveling. They were going to other cities. When I don't know. So I didn't. It wasn't like I just had a white lens over my eyes. Mm-hmm. But like you, my schooling did not really cover it. We read like Maya Angelou, read Beloved, and we, like my classic literature class, we at least had Black writers that we syllabus. But history, same as you. Martin Luther King, usually just Black History Month, Rosa Parks, Jackie Robinson, and then like a villainized version of Malcolm X.
I thought it was bad.
I thought it was so bad. I thought they painted him to be a terrorist in the history books.
Yep.
And it was very much like his methods and his movement, and we didn't watch any of his speeches.
Watching now, you're like, oh my gosh, he's so. To me, he was like an academic, yeah. I'm like, how? Yep.
And his journey was so beautiful. How he realized what he realized and what he came to learn. Like, I've since read his biography, and it's so moving. Mm-hmm. And then so I moved out of Colorado, and I went to college in New York City, and that was like massive culture. Yeah. Like going from white suburbia, the big city, and I loved it. Mm-hmm. I loved it so much. And I witnessed a lot. On the subway. Yep. I witnessed, and I don't even know if I would clock it, but I wouldn't. I think I would just brush it off and be like, I guess that's just the way things are. I mean, police and pigs and whatever. What can I do about it? Right. And I did. I mean, I had a bit of more of an education in college. You know, I took like a cultural psychology class that I loved. I read James Baldwin. I love him, and I love his books and his essays, but it still wasn't enough to get me off my ass and show up. Until recently, I think I was so heartbroken by everything that was happening with Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. And then when George Floyd happened, I heard from my friend who is on Supergirl with me, McCod Brooks, and we were texting as a group text. We have a cast group chat, and he was not doing okay. And I called him, and we had this amazing conversation, and he really was the one that opened my eyes, I think, to how I had been claiming to be neutral about it. And saying, well, I'm not racist, but like not actively doing anything against racism. Right. And I had known him for 5 years by this time, and worked with him very closely, and seen things that he had gone through at work. Yep. And was always, and like would talk to him about it when I would see things that he would go through, or he would tell me things that would happen, or things that people would say to him that were overtly racist, that were not great. And I would obviously acknowledge that he had gone through those things, and hate that my friend was experiencing these things, but I was not showing up. And I was not standing up for him, and I was not helping to amplify his voice, and even just this last year, I mean, lots of things that I've witnessed, I've not done anything about. And I claimed it was because, well, I'm not Black, so I don't feel like I can talk about this. I don't feel like I can talk about this because I don't know the feeling of being Black in America. I don't know. I just made excuses. And that's what that comes from is, people, I just said this the other day, there's been a microscope on people of color for hundreds of years. Yeah. And it's never been turned around on white people themselves. Yep. And so I was, well, that's a Black problem. That's a Black problem. Black people should be the one to fix it. If it were up to us, we would already have equality. Yeah. Yeah. So it took... Yeah. No, go ahead. It just took my friend telling me, you've got to take responsibility for this, and you have, and he made me realize that I do have this platform, and if I do care, like I was telling him that I did in my heart, why wouldn't I spread that? Yeah. Did he call you out personally, or was he saying things that made you see? He was saying things that made me see. Yeah. He was saying things that made me see, and he called me out personally for an entirely separate situation that he wasn't involved in, but that he knew about. Even more opened my eyes. So, and after that conversation, it was past point of no return. I could not see anything else anymore. And my husband and I, almost, I think a lot of people did, just like went into this hole, and we're glued to the TV, we're glued to our phones, we're just like so